I'm heading out. I've done everything I needed to. Don't interfere. I'm not ready to discuss it. And frankly, it's none of your business. I turned on my heel, ignoring the desperate calls from Lucas, my husband. At that moment, something inside me snapped. All the affection I once felt for him dissolved, and I knew this was just the beginning of the unraveling. It all started right before the holidays. It was our first Christmas since tying the knot, and I had been eagerly planning everything. My name is Claire, I'm 26, and I recently married a man the same age. We met at work, though we're in different departments. I'm the kind who likes to tackle tasks head-on, while Lucas is more laid-back, often taking his time with decisions. The contrast between us is noticeable to everyone, and many of our co-workers have mentioned how mismatched we seem. But despite our differences, we'd managed to make it work. Until recently. It was late December, and Lucas and I were chatting about the upcoming holidays. What about Christmas? Should we visit both of our families? I asked, smiling as I imagined the two of us visiting our parents, sharing dinner, and exchanging gifts. Lucas nodded, but his response was far from enthusiastic. His distant expression made me pause, but I shrugged it off. The holidays were always a busy time at work, and I figured stress was getting to both of us. I was swamped with deadlines, working overtime daily, and rarely seeing Lucas. Finally, on December 23rd, I finished work on time for once. Walking into our apartment, I noticed something strange, an unfamiliar pair of shoes at the door. Next to Lucas's usual sneakers was a pair that clearly belonged to a woman. I furrowed my brow and stepped into the living room. Hey, I'm home. Who's here? Lucas was sitting on the couch, and next to him was a woman I recognized, his sister, Alyssa. I had only met her a few times, but she always seemed intense. Oh, hi, Claire. Late as usual, huh? Alyssa's tone was sharp as she eyed me from across the room. My work has been a bit crazy lately, I muttered, glancing at Lucas. He said nothing, his expression unreadable. Alyssa didn't let up. Maybe you should reconsider working so much. After all, once you're married, you should focus on the household. Right, Lucas? I froze. Quit my job? That wasn't part of the plan. Lucas and I had discussed this before getting married. He knew how important my career was to me. I turned to him, searching for support, but he only stared blankly at the floor. You've always known how I feel about this, Claire, Lucas said quietly, finally speaking up. I thought, after marriage, you'd consider things differently. I felt a chill down my spine. This wasn't the Lucas I knew. Alyssa, clearly satisfied with her brother's compliance, smirked and grabbed his arm. He's coming to our parents' place for Christmas, she said with a victorious gleam in her eyes. Alone? I was stunned. What about us? This is our first Christmas together. Lucas shrugged. You never asked me if that's what I wanted. His words hit me like a truck. I stood there, frozen, as Alyssa led him toward the door. They left me standing in the living room, utterly alone, my heart sinking as the sound of the front door closing echoed through the apartment. The next few days were a blur. I was hurt, angry, and confused. How had things spiraled so quickly? I thought we were on the same page, but clearly I had been wrong. Just as I was about to lose hope, my phone rang. It was my dad. Claire, why don't you come home for Christmas? You don't have to deal with this alone. Without a second thought, I packed my things. With my dad's help, we moved out everything I had brought into that apartment. Everything I had worked hard for. Nearly everything in that place had been purchased by me. And as I packed up, I realized just how one-sided our relationship had been. I had been giving, and Lucas had taken advantage of it. A few days later, my dad and I decided to confront Lucas and his family directly. On Christmas morning, we arrived at Alyssa's house unannounced. She answered the door with a scowl. What do you want? She spat. We're here to finalize things, my dad said firmly, handing her the divorce papers. Alyssa was furious, but my dad remained calm, his loyalty demeanor showing through. After a heated exchange, Lucas finally emerged from the house. He looked lost, unsure of himself without his sister to speak for him. "There's no way we're getting divorced," Lucas shouted. I sighed. "Then we'll see you in court. Trust me, Lucas. This won't end well for you." The reality of the situation must have sunk in, because a few days later, I received the signed papers. It was over. Lucas and I were no longer tied to each other. It hurt, but at the same time, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I threw myself back into my work, surrounded by supportive colleagues who had seen firsthand how difficult things had been. Lucas never returned to the office. Word spread quickly, and everyone knew the truth. As for me, I'm doing better than ever, moving forward with my life and my career. Whatever Lucas is doing now, I don't know, and frankly, I don't care. I'm free, and that's all that matters. Weeks passed, and I settled into my new apartment near my parents' home. Life moved on quietly, but the echoes of my past still lingered in my mind. I spent more time with my family, feeling the warmth of their support. However, something inside me refused to let go of the hurt I had endured. There was a sense of unfinished business, a need for closure that still gnawed at me. One evening, as I was wrapping up work on a new project, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment before answering, expecting it to be work-related. Instead, a familiar voice cut through the silence. "Hey, it's me. I don't know if you'll answer, but I just need to talk." It was him, my ex-husband. My hand tightened around the phone, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Why was he calling? What could he possibly have to say now, after all this time? "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened," he continued, his voice quieter than I remembered. "And I realize now, I messed up. I should have stood up for you, for us. I should have been honest about how I felt." There was a pause, as if he was waiting for me to say something, but I remained silent, letting him speak. After all, this was the man who had let his sister walk all over our marriage. What could he possibly say that would change anything? "I know it's too late," he added, almost as if reading my mind. "But I want you to know I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let her get between us. I should have fought harder." Fought harder? I thought bitterly. He didn't fight at all. "I lost my job," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper now. "After everything, I just couldn't focus. And when you left, I realized how much I relied on you, how much I took for granted. I'm sorry, Ray." There it was, the apology I had once wanted to hear. But now, after all that had happened, it felt hollow. Too little, too late. He was only sorry because his life had fallen apart without me. But where was this regret when I needed it? Where was this realization when I stood in front of him, pleading for our marriage? "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said, his voice breaking. I wanted you to know that I've changed. I'm trying to be better." "Trying?" I finally said, my voice cold. "You're trying now, after everything's already over. I don't know if that's supposed to make me feel better, but it doesn't." "I know," he whispered. I'm sorry." I hung up the phone without another word. His apologies wouldn't fix the past, and I wasn't about to let his guilt drag me back into that toxic cycle. I had moved on. I had found my peace, and I wasn't going to let him take that away from me. As I sat in the silence of my apartment, I realized something important. For the first time, I didn't feel any anger. No resentment, just indifference. His words no longer had the power to hurt me. I had grown beyond that. Beyond him. The next day, I called my lawyer. There were still some final loose ends to tie up regarding the divorce settlement. I was ready to close this chapter of my life once and for all. No more lingering doubts. No more unanswered questions. By the time the papers were officially filed, I felt lighter. Free, in a way I hadn't been in years. Christmas had come and gone, but the new year brought with it a sense of renewal. My career continued to flourish, and I started traveling more for work. I was finding myself again, discovering new passions, and building a life that I controlled. one that wasn't dictated by someone else's expectations or needs. As time passed,